Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up on this nice sunny day. We're finally getting that real summer weather, it sounds like. Tomorrow might be a wet weather event, they're saying. But today, let's take advantage of it. So thanks for coming to our meeting again today. We're going to get started here. And I think today we have a great topic. We reached out to our neighboring friends in Johnstown. We talk about them a lot, as you know, about laterals and what they're doing. They seem to be the most aggressive in the area that we're aware of. So we were fortunate enough to reach out and talk to Melissa Komar. She's the executive director of the Johnstown Redevelopment Authority. Essentially, they run the sewer system for that area. So it sounds like we're used to something different for a redevelopment authority. But Melissa brings a lot of expertise with us. She was past president of the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association. So she's really knowledgeable in this area. She was kind enough to drive down today to talk to us. And so she's going to give us a little insight about their program on lateral inspection. I'm going to give you a little teaser. She will be at our conference in the fall, where she's going to elaborate more on how they assist people to pay for that. She might dabble in that a little bit today, but that's a little teaser to get you that she will be at the conference to do that talk. So without further ado, Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dave, for having me. Just to give you a little background on myself, just a little more than what Dave had mentioned is I've worked with the Johnstown Redevelopment Authority for 8 years. Prior to my time at the authority, I exited as the city manager. I worked my way through the ranks in local government in Johnstown. I started out as the GIS specialist, ended as the city manager. So through my time with the city of Johnstown, I was a part of the original discussions with DEP during the 2013 year, whenever we had signed off on our consent order. So I'm actually the last person standing from the beginning of the project to where we are today. So I have a lot of information in this PowerPoint. Feel free if I'm getting too far in the trenches of what we do at the authority and you have more questions. When Dave had originally reached out to me, it was more so to talk about the different types of progress that we've made with our residents, with our municipalities, and how we got to where we are today. So I have a lot of slides to show. At the very beginning of all this, many of our municipalities didn't want to go to the very end of say, let's just pressure test under slab on the private side of the system. Everyone was thinking, let's do our mainline work. We could work with the municipalities themselves and stay away from the private side of it. Well, as you'll see through our flow monitoring reports, that definitely did not work for the majority of the municipalities. And the proof was definitely in the flow monitoring. So the first few slides will give us an idea of just the makeup of our system and where we are. So the beginning talks in 2009 with DEP. And as Dave had mentioned, also the authority also is, although we're a redevelopment authority, we're also Johnstown Regional Sewage. So as of today, there are 21 municipalities that flow into Dorrance Point. So whenever we think about, works within the communities, obviously everybody has different demographics, different political makeup, and we had to work very diligently with all the municipalities in order to get everybody on the same page. And that took years. That wasn't something that happened overnight by any far stretch. So this is just a list that shows the geographic location of our coverage area with the Dorrance Point wastewater treatment plant and our surrounding partners, our SSO communities and non-SSOs. So obviously the largest issue was the I&I. We're obviously, a lot like a lot of your municipalities here, an old steel town. We had outdated infrastructure and just a lot of the lower demographics as far as the household income. So we knew going into this that this wasn't going to be a simple task by any far stretch. So whenever we think about the rain events, if anyone is familiar with Johnstown at all, whenever people say Johnstown, they instantly think floods. So first and foremost, with our residents, they're skitterish of water to begin with. They have a lot of questions. We never know what to expect from week to week, month to month. And the rain events not only have caused issues in the past, but also had caused many issues through this project. So whenever we originally had started with the consent order, the authority was the first group to sign the consent order. We worked with not only DEP, but with the membering municipalities to all have their own individual consent orders, which did help immensely through this process once we were 4, 5, 6 years into it. We had many public meetings that helped us a whole lot in order to get the residents on board, just to start to understand what this project was. Many of our residents, it's definitely different today, but at the very beginning, they, and no fault to their own, they just didn't understand the process. They basically didn't know the difference between a storm and a sanitary line, where the lines on their property went. Obviously, we were facing very large infrastructure projects, which caused issues just with travel from point A to point B. We basically didn't go in painting a rosy red picture when we met with our municipalities. It was more, look, there's going to be a whole lot of issues in collaboration that we're all going to have to work through together. And I think a lot of that was successful from the word go, because we did sit down with our engineers. We sat down with the general public. Open lines of communication, newsletters were sent out. And they did some of those situations created more ugly, because let's face it, sometimes the more knowledge we give, the more critical people can be. So, but we don't regret doing that. A lot at the beginning was very helpful just in providing the proper knowledge to our residents. Throughout this process, and I'm sure all of you are doing the same thing, there was a whole lot of flow monitoring. Obviously, very costly, but very worth it in the end. We were able to truly show where we were at the beginning of the project. DEP did ask in the consent order for us to flow monitor for a year. We monitored for 10 years and just had halted that flow monitoring 2 years ago when mainline work was completed. Now, since then, we actually did install 8 monitors at our SSOs, or we have 8 remaining SSOs, just to see, the progress that was made, where we are today, and just to see how much more work we have to do. So basically, at this point, right now, we are fined at a minimum $1,000 a month through DEP. Whenever we have any gate closures at the plant, which at the absolute most, I think we've had 4 in 1 year. That also created the additional $1,000 fine for us. But DEP has continued to work closely with us to alleviate those issues. But while we were presenting to the general public, we had to use these numbers. Like this is factual information that if we don't meet the DEP consent order, that we could be facing these dollar amounts. And obviously, these numbers speak volume whenever you're dealing with your residents and with the smaller municipalities that have issues fiscally, regardless of fines and mandates. So we obviously did a whole lot of mainline work. So at this point, just at the authority and Penvest, we have wonderful working relationships with Penvest. They've helped immensely through time. And whenever we talk about our private laterals, we had many discussions with Penvest also as far as funding sources, which once again, we'll talk a lot about at the conference. But for as much as they were able to help on the public side, a lot of the red tape on the private side, we didn't feel was going to work for our residents, just based on, prevailing wage costs, everything that goes along with Penvest dollars, which is why we had to be a little bit more creative. But whenever we think about just what we were up against with the public versus private, there were times where a fourth of the city was under construction. We had 3 and 4 different construction projects all going on at the same time. So whenever we think about the frustration of our residents who are, in the city of Johnstown, your normal commute to work's 3 minutes, 5 minutes tops. So just the traffic side of it, the construction side that took place, there was just just a whole lot of tension on the project. It was just everything was viewed as negative at that time. Now, all these years later, we do see the positives. We don't have manholes flipping during rain events. We don't have flooding in people's basements. So whenever I think about those initial discussions with the residents compared to where we are today, I know it seems like it takes forever to get to that positive end result, but we do notice that through the process with the public versus private work that we are seeing that. So the next few slides are just a few different drawings, just to show just more so generic drawings that we use with our residents. A lot of them were just confused about the process, didn't understand. They were thinking that they were going to have to dig up their entire basements, that they were going to have to change bathrooms on the second and third floors of their homes. It was a very ugly message at the beginning as far as what they thought they were going to have to do in comparison to what they actually did. So we use these drawings a lot just to explain what they were up against, what they had on their properties themselves. And another conversation that I had with Dave is how we use viewports through all of our projects, that basically is the connection point between the private side and the public side. So through all of our projects, we did things a little differently based on the municipality and what their engineer wanted to see. But all of the projects in our system all have a viewport either at the property line, or some of the municipalities were willing to fund 5 feet from the foundation is where the viewport was installed. So we basically use that with all of our programs and with all of the municipalities as the point of public versus private.
So going back that last slide,
Sure.
is it the norm for the communities in your area to say the public system runs to the property line?
Unless the viewport is that 5 feet from the foundation and they have an easement. So the municipalities where their governing body voted to give them that additional 5 feet. A lot of the municipalities where the parcels could have been an additional 100 feet, 120 feet of private lateral work that they wanted to assist with the funding, the property owner had to sign off on an easement. Now the municipality is responsible for that portion of the line to the viewport. And that was helpful to many of the homeowners that didn't have to deal with the excavation costs to get to where the property line ended. But there was to sign that easement. Obviously, that was a lot of legwork for the engineers, for the municipality, a lot of absentee property owners. That was an issue. And we also had a lot of decisions to make during that time with vacant properties. Do we want to take the expense of having this viewport installed? Just one project specifically, I just ran numbers to see where we were between labor and materials to install a viewport. It was a little bit over $2,000. So you had to think, if you had 200 vacant properties, was it really worth it to install these viewports? Now, here we are 10 years later. I'm thrilled that most of the time we lean to installing them. We've created a land bank in the city of Johnstown and Cambria County, which has really brought a lot of vacant properties back into reuse. So we're thrilled that we had that option, that we just didn't cap those lines and keep things moving based on the fact that there was no hope for those structures. So whenever we talk about the pressure testing, we started at the very beginning. We had dye testing. And then we had smoke testing. We did every type of testing to try to get to the point that we didn't feel that the pressure testing was the do all end all, which it did turn out in our coverage area that there really wasn't much option other than the full pressure testing. And you'll see just with the one slide that I have here, just how important it was to get everything pressure tested under slab. So this just gives an overview of the flow monitoring, what DEP mandated for us to flow monitor, and what we chose to do moving forward. And the reason for the flow monitoring is one of the ways that we were also able to work with our ratepayers that are truly in our system as far as receiving a treatment bill was the monthly bill itself. What we did is and you'll see that later on, is we created a billing system to reward the property owners that were pressure tested under slab. So they had a decrease in their monthly bill every month once their property was in compliance. And of the options that we gave had a lot to do with flow monitoring for each municipality. This shows the amount of meters that we had at the beginning of the project and up until 2 years ago. Basically, we just wanted to gather as much data. We didn't want to give hypothetical messages to our residents, our ratepayers. We wanted to be able to have true fact, to be able to show, look, this is why we're doing this. This is where we are. This is the progress that has been made. And it's been very helpful to be able to use that data, not only to present back to DEP, but also to continue to have the public meetings and to work with our governing bodies just to show the progress that's been made.
What's the acronym DDS? 42 total DDS meters.
I'm not sure. What do you think?
I didn't know if
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I don't know.
I didn't know if that was a specific meter or a type of meter. In the Balcasan Regional Collection
Sure.
Flow Monitoring Plan, we've got similar type of flow monitoring location, different names.
Sure,
but-
sure.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll send a quick text to our engineer and just ask him, and I'm sure he'll have a quick response for us. That way I can get that back to you before we're done here. Unfortunately, my biggest focus on the meters was the cost of all of them.
Rightfully.
While she's doing that, just as some context, we were talking about the number of meters within our region and, this times multiple amounts and, multiple hundreds of meters is definitely something that, when you're looking at this, multiply everything you see by 400s, that kind of thing.
And we obviously have a much smaller system than what all of you are dealing with, but we were at about $200,000 a month between engineering costs and the flow meters themselves. So, I mean, it obviously was worth it just to be able to show where we are. But it was definitely costly to the authority, but like I said, worth it for sure. So these next few slides are going to show systems with storm events prior to being pressure tested. You'll see the description right under if they were still the old clay terracotta systems, how many years, whether there was any pressure testing of mains, laterals. And if you just pay attention to the green line, that shows the compliance of where we needed to be. And it's pretty amazing just to see where we were in comparison to where we are today. So this is one of our smaller municipalities that right now they are 100% pressure tested. And prior to completing their mainline work and the private laterals, you see the spikes during the rain events. Then you'll see at this point, and this is a larger system that we have, Pegasus. It's made up of numerous municipalities. So they had a whole other type of challenge that although they had one system, they also had more as far as the maintenance side with numerous municipalities.
Just a quick question on
Sure.
the storm that you're picking to make the compression.
Sure.
Is that something you guys decided on? Is that something?
They were major rain events. If you see, it's normally within so many inches of the comparison between the work that was done and you'll see on the let me. These were just the originals whenever we started the program. You'll see on the future slides the amount of rain per each rain event. And we got what I chose was the ones that was the closest as the rain event prior to the work and then after. So this slide truly tells the story here. And I know the font's small, but I'll explain it for you. The top left is a rain event with a system of 50 years old. Absolutely no pressure testing was done on our mains or our private side. So you see we are where we are there with the spikes throughout that time in July. Then we move to the upper right-hand corner of a 10-year-old system. So work that was done on the mains, but absolutely no laterals. And obviously we still see the spikes. Then the bottom left is the same area when it was 65% pressure tested. And then the last one is whenever it was 100% pressure tested on both our main lines and our private laterals. So whenever we look at the comparison of these, it truly tells the story, although our municipalities didn't understand that. And by all means, I'm sure they wanted to exhaust all options for their residents. And obviously not have to do the work on the private side. And a lot of our creativity as far as funding for our residents came from the public meetings of the unfortunate situations that people were placed in. I'd say the average cost to get the work done in these homes was approximately $4,000. Now, some could have went down to $2,000, they did. Depending on finished basements, things like that, and some of our surrounding municipalities, not in the city, the project itself would go up to 8,000 or 9,000 on the private side.
So I don't know if you're gonna get to this eventually.
Sure.
If you can, as you're going through it, think on some of the stakeholder input meetings.
Sure. Absolutely. A lot of those, so what we did was we obviously pulled in funding sources. We have assistance from our local foundations for the authority. We work with the county redevelopment authority and the city of Johnstown for block grant dollars. So what we were able to do is during those public meetings, we had all of our partnering agencies there to truly brainstorm on not only how we could assist on just the day-to-day to get through the days. A lot of the coordination efforts weren't just with water and wastewater also. We learned through the program that if we already had that trench line excavated and there was a deteriorated gas line or one that may have needed replaced within like the next 5 years. Once we were about halfway in, we all live and learn through the process. We were able to start replacing water lines in the same trench. We were able to replace gas lines. So the cost of excavating and paving the restoration afterwards wasn't only 100% on the authority, but we were able to work with our partnering utilities also. So whenever we talk about who were a part of those meetings, the audience continued to grow through the project. That where it started out as just a group of unhappy residents and your council, it turned into who else could benefit in a positive way, although it would cost for the other utilities. Their restoration prices were just, they would just continue to decrease whenever as much collaboration as we create, we did. Another area where we were successful was we received brownfields funding. So basically, the very first project was obviously difficult. Going into it, we just had to follow a lot of the guidance from our engineer. It wasn't a lot of creativity. It was more everyone's scared and skitterish at this point as far as what this is going to be. By the very last interceptor project we did at the authority, We received funding from the Army Corps of Engineers. They're the $313 that are out there for water and wastewater. One day, I started to just think in my mind, I always do the best I can to leverage dollars on every project. And the city of Johnstown, at this point, we were in about 130 million in our mainline work. And in the back of my mind, I would think, why didn't we receive any $313? So one day, the Community and Economic Development Director and myself went to Pittsburgh, met with the Corps, and just explained our project. And just showed our investment, and just questioned, like, what could we be doing better to receive these funds? Well, the very next project, once we went through the process, we received 2.1 and $313. On top of that, it was a Penvest grant for 2 million. We received a Penvest loan for 2 million and 1.4 in brownfields funding for blight elimination and mapping through the project. So on that last project, we finally came full circle of receiving local, state, and federal dollars. And our foundations also provided funding for blight elimination of vacant structures along that same corridor where the interceptor was. So it was really exciting. The most exciting part was to see how we were able to leverage funds through the whole process just by being creative and having those discussions.
This comparison of these four here. Is that happened through a complete separation project? So was there a whole new sanitary line put in?
Correct.
So
They were either lined or replaced. Yes.
They were lined. What did the stormwater?
I'm sorry.
If they were lined, was there a separate stormwater?
Correct.
installed?
So we did have a pretty strong stormwater system going into this. So through the project, there were areas of town where we installed brand new storm systems that we didn't have prior to. And then we were also able to, our storm system that was intact through the project, we also did some updates to that. Once again, while we already had excavation in place. And we also paved curb to curb through the whole project. Where Penvest is willing to fund the 3 feet on both sides of the trench line and the trench line, we increased our rates in the city of Johnstown itself, not the surrounding municipalities, to cover the curb to curb paving through the process. And that also, although it was a cost increase, the residents were more welcoming of the project in their neighborhoods to know that streets that hadn't been paved in 20 or 30 years were now being paved. So, like I said, at the very beginning, it was very rough. And by the end of it, people were just more on board of seeing the positives, rather than the negatives. Yes,
So are those graphs, are they representative of the same area?
yes,
So it was on the top left, here was our play system before we did the separation project. That happens on the right, and 65%.
Yeah.
That's
it is. It really is. And that's why it was, for as frustrating it was and as costly as it was for all of the graphs. And you'll see, I have more here. And I'll gladly share any information that we have of, it's almost like if you know your system so well, you actually saw it happening as well. Like where we had so many issues with flooded basements on certain streets and certain basins. And then we, as the next year rolled around, then it was during rain events and spring and the fall. It was actually exciting to see it happening as well as viewing the graphs. So whenever I was asked to talk about the different types of testing as far as what got us to where we are with the full pressure testing. Once again, this is Daisy Town Borough, but pretty much every municipality followed the same suit. They all tried to never get to the point of pressure testing under slab. But this is just the results of each type of testing in this very small municipality of Daisy Town. And you saw with the slide before how many spikes there were. So we have here the area before the comprehensive pressure testing. And whenever I had mentioned about these slides will show the amount of rain, you'll see them here. on the exact dates that they pulled the flows, what it was, and the amount of rain. That was after the comprehensive pressure test. So it's just, I mean, it totally tells the story, not only within the municipalities on the streets from point A to point B, but just the difference that we were able to make just by getting the work completed with, and they are 100% pressure tested right now, that whole municipality.
Did any residents complain that the pressure testing caused cracks? There's just that wasn't there before.
Yes, we've heard every complaint you could possibly imagine. People have said their toilets have shot off on the third floor of their house that have nothing through. We've absolutely heard it all.
So how did you do that? I mean, how would you go in and seal one end of their system?
At the viewport,
And how much pressure would you put in the line?
0.25.
Okay.
Yes. So, what we do is we also have property owners that insist that they're gonna pass before they're ever pressure tested. So we have a $75 fee if they just want their property pressure tested, just to see with their own two eyes that the pipes are not going to pass the test. So we've provided every opportunity to the residents that we can to make them feel more comfortable. At first, there was no charge, but then everybody in the town wanted their properties to be pressure tested. So whenever we started to charge, people still do it, but you'll see at the very end of this, I have a chart from 2015 of all of our municipalities and how many properties were pressure tested as to where we are today. So it's very helpful. We actually get a monthly update of that chart, and each month it shows the progress. But we've heard my house never flooded before. Now it does, which it does because all the water was going into the system. So we have a lot of the program that we have that we're going to really dig into at the conference, it's called our sewer lateral compliance program. We have a representative of JRA and who goes into the home. We actually provide contractors for this type of work. We fund the projects. And at our pre-bid meetings, we have a representative of JRA with the property owner, with all the contractors. It's almost like your mini infrastructure project that we go through the whole process with the residents. And so many do not want sump pumps. Sump pumps are the biggest issue. They don't want them. They're noisy. They're this, they're that. I would probably say at least 10 to 15% of the time, we end up going back to the house months after the work is done and installing sump pumps. So they don't want at the very beginning of the process to realize what needs to be done, but by the end of it, everybody's on board.
I have a question. So that was, I think you answered my question, but I was gonna say, have you ran into the issue where when you're redoing the sewer under the house, you have to install sump pumps because now you've got the problem where the water that was going in there.
Correct.
And how do you stop water? So if you seal that pipe under the floor, what's to stop the water from coming through the walls and going across the floor and into the?
Yes, and between the contractors, the property owner giving us the history of the property, and our representative from JRA, which if we need to, we do call in our engineer for certain projects. Between French drains and sump pumps, if they'll listen to us, because ultimately they are paying the authority back. So we have numerous grants that can help people at low to moderate income, but the way the loan program is set up, that they have 20 years to pay us back at a very minimal cost, but it's still their dollars.
Yeah.
So if they choose to not want to have that sump pump or the French drains, then obviously it's their home. We don't overstep. We follow.
But aren't you still getting my thought is, aren't you still getting the runoff across the floor into your system then if they don't put the sump pump in?
No, because of the drains are tied directly to, the drains have to go to the storm system.
Okay.
Wow, and that helped during the dye testing part of it. Because what we did the first time around was every property that was dye tested, we had those results to know whose rain spouts were going where, whose drains were going where,
You connect the floor drains then to the.
the storm system.
Okay.
Correct.
I understand.
I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get an understanding of. What were the typical repairs? Obviously, you identified a lot of things that were under the slab.
Sure.
What was the typical then solutions for addressing?
full
Is that what you're
replacement,
gonna get?
full replacement. And you actually see pictures.
Okay.
I brought, maybe 8 to 10 pictures of
Perfect.
of basements just to show you whether it be minimal or maximal work to be done. And they're literally just pictures, no descriptions. I just thought it would help everybody in the room to understand what the homes look like
Right.
during that process.
We do have some, conversation occurring online,
Okay,
and it goes off of all the way back to the DDS conversation.
okay,
Tim at Alexan was saying he thinks it maybe was the data delivery system,
let me
which
see.
reduces maintenance required, and then Sam took a picture of a hatch DDS system.
That's it. Talk, yep.
So, the data delivery services, Jason,
That
is
is-
the answer.
Yes,
If
data,
they-
that's what Tom said. Yep.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay, so that was the data provider, the service.
Data delivery service, JRA bought data through Hawk and avoided meter ownership.
Gotcha.
Okay, sorry about that. I had no idea. Okay, and any of those questions that pop up, Tom's very responsive. If I don't have the, like I said, I look at a whole lot of numbers, but anything I can, and if I don't get the answers for you today, I'll gladly respond over the next few days. Pegasus, same situation. Whenever you see dates, rain flow and gallons prior to pressure testing. After pressure testing. Yeah. So this just summarizes the different systems, more of just what I have been talking about here for the last few minutes. This is just Tom's summary of the I&I, the SSOs. I just had him draw up what his ideas were in summary. Basically, you don't eliminate enough I&I unless you pressure test.
I have another question.
Sure.
So if you're pressure testing it before, how do you stop the toilets, the sinks? How did you, what was the?
The balls are used at each
Okay.
area and in the basement. So in a lot of the basements, we have been able to run them above grade, where whenever the homes were built, they were below grade. So that did. Whenever we see I'll show you these pictures real quick. They're right here.
Question I have,
Sure.
how did you convince, we talked about this, the municipalities in our area, just get municipalities to consider a voluntary massive sale, visual video inspection of this, the laterals to create, using an ASPA system has become a huge hurdle.
Mhm.
That they're concerned of the burden of the rate.
Sure. And we didn't. We did through this process. At the very beginning, there weren't any municipalities that said, we're just gonna do this. Like you and I had spoke prior to, the video was the beginning. The biggest issue is the video, the smoke testing, the dye testing is, and I think that we could be used as an example in Johnstown. Don't tell your constituents one thing and then 2 years later upgrade it. And then 2 years after that, they are more unhappy whenever they're told something for 6 or 8 years. And while there are funding opportunities or where they may have been in a better financial situation, that if they don't have to, they don't have to. We don't know why municipality A is telling their residents this. We don't feel that we have to do this. And you'll see in the chart at the end, you can see which municipalities have from the very beginning, once the data was collected. Just said, look, we're just gonna bite the bullet. We're just gonna do this. We're gonna say A, B, and C, it has to be done. And then other ones that we're just now getting to our last municipality, that what they're doing is they're monitoring viewports during rain events of individual houses. And that is causing a very unhappy situation for some residents, that they feel that someone's just out in their yard with the viewport the day of a rain event, but yet their neighbor down the street, why aren't they being monitored? So whenever you say, how did we, it was all through the process of showing what wasn't working. It was just the Now, the municipalities that have just joined our system within the last 2 years, they're going directly to pressure testing. And you'll see that also at the end. So the ones that have been a part of this from the very beginning, it wasn't an instantaneous response of just because this worked in Johnstown, Westmont, Brownstown, Daisytown, Daleboro, like you'll see them, that we're gonna do this. And that's how we got to where we are. So these are like this left-hand side where the terracotta pipe was once underground with the elevations, with the property owner. Sometimes they'll have a random, especially in our homes, like the old in Johnstown, there's a lot of steel worker and coal miner homes that just had a random toilet in the basement. Whenever you'd get home from the mill or the mine, you'd go directly into the basement to get showered. Like they'll say, we haven't used this toilet in 20 years. Well, do you want the toilet? I mean, we obviously recommend to keep it. 9 out of 10 people don't want them. Like they see the cost of that portion of the type of work, so they'll say to eliminate it. So that's where there's some examples that we are able to run some of the lines above ground, rather than jackhammering up the basement, which obviously eliminates cost.
I know.
I'll just click through these. If anybody sees anything or if they want me to stop, just let me know. I just wanted to show, some examples of what we deal with. Try to keep obviously everything as neat as we can, for the property owner, replace everything the best that we can for them.
But
Sure.
did building codes permit you to put exposed lines in the basement like that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And the way that we were able to get around a portion of it per city code was not going to allow it. So what we did, and it was actually during the manager that we had in 13 and 14, and we showed it as a more cost-effective way for the residents, as we eliminated the permit fees for the sewer work to be done. Therefore, it wasn't, as long as you followed the building code for the state, we didn't have what was actually implemented through the municipalities.
Which is a little different here with Allegheny County, we have plumbing code.
Sure.
Plumbing division of the health department, so there's a little difference there.
The only portion that we obviously had to follow was for commercial buildings with master plumbers. It had to be a city certified master plumber to do the work in the commercial buildings, which still cause problems. But we couldn't do that, we had to follow. So this is the authority resolution that I had talked about earlier, as far as how we were able to provide a reduction in the rates for properties that were in compliance. So basically, we have the current rates of today, just to give you examples as far as what we did. We have a flat monthly billing rate for residential homes, and then we have a rate per EDU for equivalent dwelling units, based on water usage. And we just have always tried to just give the reduction to the properties that are in compliance since the beginning of this project. And a lot of the way we have our program set up is it's actually more cost effective for the properties to be in compliance by going through our program than it is to obviously pay the higher rate at the authority. And then the maintenance side of their bill, almost every municipality is surcharging their residents right now that haven't done the work. So we have some municipalities that are surcharging $100 a month to people that aren't in compliance. And the authority always wanted to be the friendly neighbor and never have a surcharge. So we created our rates based on a decrease if you're in compliance, not a surcharge if you're not.
So your rates aren't just, they're not based on any water usage?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
which is a foreign concept. But,
We figured out where we had to be. Where we are. Yes.
and Melissa, if I might kind of draw parallels, the differences between Alcoasand service area and the Johnstown service area. I believe the redevelopment authority does the billing for all 25,000 customers.
We actually have a billing agency, so we contract with RDM.
Okay, but,
Yes.
but you're sending
correct.
sewer bills, remember that agency?
Oh, yes,
You're sending bills to everyone that's contributing
for treatment. Yes,
for treatment.
correct.
And if a municipality complies with the two categories up there, that resident that is in that municipality pays that bill.
Correct.
If they're not in compliance, they pay the larger bill. So there's a financial incentive in terms of treatment costs
Correct.
to do this work.
Mhm.
Conversely, in Alcoasand, where the regional treatment authority only has 83 customers. In those municipalities bill their 20,000 EDUs. And then once a quarter, those municipalities got a check to Alcoasand for their treatment costs based on water consumption. And so there's a different institutional way to incentivize the municipalities to go with a stricter lateral program. From the perspective is there is the discount that you're talking about, the treatment costs.
Correct.
And so that's a big difference in terms of the institutional setup between Alcoasand and Johnstown.
Sure, absolutely. I'm certain there's more than not. I just look at it as just the way you explained it all. Is there a way to have some sort of a brainstorming session with these groups and just throw out some ideas? I mean, that's truly how we got to where we are today. Just to try to do whatever you possibly can to spin this in a positive direction. As far as, in the environment, as far as the finance, we talked about the dollars that we're spending at the wastewater plant treating stormwater. And it's really hard for a resident that's not in this realm to even possibly understand where we're at, what the dollars are, what we deal with just on a day-to-day basis. So it's definitely different in every municipality as it is every authority. It was just,
Gets this,
I'm sorry,
but the residents get.
they
this.
did, yeah.
They get
absolutely.
this, they said, and so the residents would probably, if I was a resident, I would be pushing my municipality to do what's necessary so that I could get a reduced rate.
For sure.
Are
And
there any areas that do not? So you're totally, that's a separate source system, right?
correct. We own the interceptors. So where their main lines feed in at the city line. So the surrounding municipalities have their main lines that feed into our interceptors at the border to the city of Johnstown.
But the system itself doesn't have any permitted combined.
No, it does not.
And that's a key difference as well, because at this venue, we've stated before and everyone shook their head, we're all hybrid, meaning combined and separate.
Sure.
With permits or combined sewer overflows and things like that. That's another difference between, the Johnstown project and their wet weather efforts that are doing fantastic in the Alcoasand service area. Sure.
You showed the 625 gallons per day for you. Is that for a particular storm? Was that defined?
That's what we're supposed to meet for every day. That's actually written
So
directly.
that's
to our
really
people.
any event.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's actually, whenever folks reach out to us, they always ask the DEP mandate pressure testing. They did not. DEP told us where we have to get to at the 625. They never said how to get there. So this was just our creative way of living and learning the processes that we went through, the work that we did to get to that point.
So this last April. Wet,
Sure.
did you experience,
We had one gate closure at the plant.
but what about it throughout the system? Was there SSOs that thought, or was there manholes that just not constructed SSOs?
Sure. There were 4. We activated 4 during the rain event in April. Where we, 4 out of,
Constructed SSOs?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about like, did any manholes just?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like whenever the gentleman in the back had asked me, whenever I said, about the flow graphs, you actually see it just from point A to point B, were ones where every time we had major rain events, we were just driving from point A to point B just to see what was taking place. It just doesn't happen anymore. And we still have some municipalities that we have to get on board to be able to close off the remaining SSOs. But we just don't want to cause any issues to our city residents who have met all of the criteria that was presented to them because of surrounding municipalities that haven't quite completed their work yet. And I mean the private side, not the main one. So this, once again, just explains the residential rate calculations, where we were, where we are, and how we decided on it. We had HRG do a rate study for us in 2023. That was the first time we had increased rates through the project. So whenever you had asked if any of it's based on water usage, the EDUs are for the commercial dwelling units. But as far as residential homes go, it's just the standard flat rate. This is just Tom's engineering expertise with numbers.
When we do the pressure test, I did step out.
Sure.
I understand, you go into the viewpoint, you block it off, you go to the basement or the
Sure.
lowest rate.
Yes.
Water closet, right?
Mhm.
How do you determine if there's a under draining?
Because they're all blocked off, so it doesn't hold any pressure if there is. So this is like post-construction. The majority of the pressure testing is done post-construction. So every area that would be sealed off for the pressure test. So the majority of the contractors they'll do the outside work first. They'll pressure test the outside private line on the property and then the inside. So we have an EADS inspector. We contract with the EADS group. We have an EADS inspector on site with the contractor and the private property owner.
You don't pressure test before. So that's what you said, I pay $75 to say,
Correct.
I don't have anything illegal tied into the.
Correct.
So it's presumed that there is essentially what's
Yes.
happening and basically saying, you need to go disconnect your footing drains
Correct.
and any other illicit connections.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because of the work that was already done with the dye testing and the smoke testing. So through our GIS system, we have the results of the smoke and dye testing for every property. So the initial conversation with the inspector on site is to go over that information with the resident.
What type of dye testing was that previously?
With the rain spouts and a lot, if something really showed a red flag, then they would request to go inside the homes.
Now, I was just wondering about like foundation drains, because typically that won't show up in smoke testing.
Sure,
If that wasn't dye tested by flooding the ground, you're not gonna see that either.
sure.
But obviously, that's one of the biggest sources out there.
Exactly. And this was done, it was like very, very early on, before even the consent order. I just think whenever everybody got wind of this at that time, I don't know, a GIS specialist or something. I don't know the in the trenches work of what they did then. I just always pull the dye and the smoke testing results now whenever property owners are very unhappy that they have to do any of the work. We try to tell their story from every type of testing that we did, just to get them to understand. We didn't just like wake up today and tell you had to do this.
And the foundation, I think, could be based on just type of construction and when it was constructed.
Sure.
You know, at that time, all of them were connected. Versus a new
Well-
home that maybe had been built that foundation rates weren't connected.
No, and how many just dug to the closest pipe and just tied into it? You know, we've seen some pretty crazy situations out there, which I'm sure all of you do as well.
So that slide is also key, and I think it speaks to your question. So if I'm a homeowner in municipality XYZ, and my municipality XYZ didn't pass a mandatory resolution to have everybody go through the process, but I did so voluntarily myself.
Correct.
Once I comply with everything, I get the lower rate,
Mhm.
irrespective of what my municipality does.
Correct.
That's a key element to the resolution.
And you'll actually see and I'm not gonna call them out, but you'll see it on the chart. The municipality, that people were just starting to do it on their own. They want the lesser rate. They see every municipality is now, these surcharges are just increasing and like they all start out at $25. We have one that's up to 150. We have one at 100. So they're just people that honestly understand the process and have witnessed what's taken place over time. They're just starting to do it on their own. So where are we today? So these are the charts I kept referring to. So 2015, this is where we were. Obviously 28% total. That's the number we focus on at the authority. We provide this data to every municipality on a monthly basis. Just to show where the remaining portion of the coverage area is. Sometimes just to show people like be a better municipal.
So again, when we see that it's been pressure tested, it means that someone's done rehab to their home to do it, and then that's just the confirmation of that.
Correct, yes.
So Browntown only has 350,000.
Oh, yeah, there's some very small municipalities. Yeah. Yeah, Daisy Town is the one that I used as an I'm sorry.
So I thought Allegheny County was bad.
Oh, no, if you even say the word consolidation in Cambria County, everybody wants to twitch. Yeah.
So I've just seen it, because in Pittsburgh, we talk about,
Oh, yeah, 160 in Daisy Town. Yeah. So you see these numbers, Daisy Town, Dale, and East Conemaugh and Jackson East Taylor were the municipalities that were close. Brownstown was very close at the time. But you see, just use the city of Johnstown, 774 in 2015. And we're at, 28%. Now here we are today. This was last month's report.
Have you run parallel sewers in all of those communities?
Yes,
did you already,
we had the majority of them.
So like the foundations or whatever, how they're being disconnected, those can be tied into the municipal storm.
Storm, yes,
When you run the new sewer, you leave the old sewer in place, you're just running the new sewer to sanitary fixtures, whatever's there from before stays and goes to the old sewer outside.
correct. And areas where they didn't have a storm, we used the sanitary as a new storm, and now there's a new sanitary.
so
That's the parallel approach that we've talked about at this venue for eons. This is not everything.
So what if the community already had, like the front of this house, there was a separate sanitary and a separate store?
Mhm.
You didn't construct yet another,
No, not if there was, so that's where if they already had a storm and a sanitary, the storm was still the storm, just making sure all the drains, all the downspouts, everything, all the water that was to be,
so if you found a home that from the street to the house obviously just had a sanitary lateral.
Mhm.
So if you found that had illicit discharge,
Mhm.
how did you separate that?
they had to whenever the work was done on their private side.
So then did they run a line out to the storm sewer?
Correct. And we eliminated, or just to daylight. They could also run them just to daylight. So a lot of people, small scale fix, cut off your downspouts, run whatever they are, the extensions to get just to daylight. At least run them to daylight, just not in the sanitary system.
What if you found an under drain?
Well, they either had to cap them off or they had to tie into the system, they had to eliminate them.
Okay, so that's where you're saying sump pumps, like.
Yes, exactly.
Sump pump.
Yeah, if you had the
Yes.
foundation drains that were tied in.
Yes,
Obviously, if that's below the storm sewer, then you need some type of pump to pump it up to the storm
Sure.
sewer or pump it to
So
the
that,
backyard.
that's kind of what I envision in our systems where we talk about that. What we're doing is trying to find that illicit discharge connected to that lateral. And then figuring out a way to get that stormwater now or groundwater to a relief. I.e. the environment or to a storm sewer.
and I can name many situations that we came across, double houses owned by separate owners with the same line exiting the home. situations where then the sump pumps created ice issues in the winter time that, you know, just like amending ordinances constantly as you come up with situations. We've had issues with lines that run from like through an entire parcel of their neighbors, like say it's the property behind to the front, run through there, you cap one off, all of a sudden you realize that house doesn't have any sewage at this point. So, I mean, we've ran into every possible, I mean, and I could have a new one today that's a situation, I don't know. But those types of questions, we just basically lived and learned with the engineer and with the municipalities.
So why is Millertown or Middle Taylor pending?
They're new to our system. So they were all, as much as we don't want to say it, they had a lot of Wildcat, they had septic systems. So they are now, and that's why I say Middle Taylor and West Taylor are the two newest additions to the plant. And they're just going full blown new laterals, pressure testing into our system.
What
Yes.
percent of the disconnections, say, go into storm sewers? Versus,
I would be guessing,
okay.
yeah.
One of the things I've seen in other
Sure.
places that have gone through those separations is, especially I'm picturing in Pittsburgh here, we have a lot of houses. Row houses, things along those
Sure.
lines, right up against each other. There's not a whole lot of places to put it.
Mhm.
You know, so if you pump it to the backyard, then it's what Mark was just saying, where now all of a sudden there's
Absolutely.
pressures on the basement walls, still
Yeah.
makes it in. Or now causes those flooding that you didn't used to have.
For sure.
Where if you can effectively get it to the storm sewer, obviously then you're solving that problem by getting it to receiving water versus
Sure.
just keeping it stored in the groundwater around the house.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's caused neighbor disputes. It causes issues with the municipality. Like I said, amending ordinances that just try to do what's best for the residents. None of it's been simple by any means.
I've even seen around here, a lot of municipalities won't allow private stormwater to be tied into the storm system as well.
Sure.
So that'd be another hurdle, you know, and I think in this region to talk through so that it can be tied in to be taken out.
Blows my mind why you wouldn't run a private system with your storm system.
I think a lot of the examples are what's helpful.
Mhm.
That, just to say, you know, why would not, okay, so you don't want to, but why not? It's like you're saying, why wouldn't you?
Well,
Allow
well,
that.
bringing up those examples, I wouldn't, you mentioned the icing of the road, someone that disconnects it, takes it out to the curb line, now in the winter,
Correct.
you get ice sheets down every
Sure.
road.
Yeah.
Or you don't put it in and now all of a sudden you're flooding your own
Oh,
basement,
exactly.
or you're flooding your neighbor's basement,
Sure.
or things along those lines, and that
So
gives
the
them peace of
majority of the
mind.
municipalities not have full storm systems here.
Well, no, so it's like 75.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
no, yes.
Yes, okay.
I think it's a mix, I think because of the topography, there's
Sure.
lots of places that it could sheet flow over a hill and go into a pervious area and that, so there's not necessarily a dedicated storm going down every street.
No.
When you look at like our region, think about it. The suburbs probably have the separate systems.
Okay.
These towns that are closer to the rivers,
Mhm.
the older, have the combined.
Okay.
By the era they were built,
Way it was.
you know.
But even if it's separate, doesn't necessarily mean there's a dedicated storm going down every road too. I think that's the unique part, even in the separate sanitary.
Sure.
Because of the
Yeah.
topography, there's many places that, yes, you have a dedicated sanitary, but there's not a storm sewer to be able to discharge this type of thing into. Now, you might also have the topography that will put it in the valley, and it may be okay to go down there. But
You have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned, all right, so we have a bunch of different scenarios that have run through an option, things like that. And these examples, I think, are what's going to be very helpful to us trying to, you know, for individual homeowners.
Sure.
Do you guys have anything put together that kind of lays out different unique scenarios?
We don't. We don't.
I think it'd be nice to, you know, on our end, if we could put something together, that
Sure.
be working with you, just,
Oh, absolutely.
here's, you know, actual examples. of-
paper.
Here's,
Sure.
you know, a normal scenario that you went through. Here's kind of how the process worked. Here with the cost associated with it. Here's how it paid for. Here's,
Sure.
you know, how it was with them. Or, hey, these were the difficult ones. Here's some weird scenarios that we went through. I I think that'd be very helpful.
No, absolutely. And our board is very giving, like they don't want anybody to relive if there's one area of this that we could prevent from someone else needing to go through it, they're very welcoming to sharing of information. They were pleased that I was here today just to explain all of this. And like I said, none of it's the perfect world, but I see exactly what you're saying. We rely so heavily on our GIS with everything at our fingertips that every situation is just a push of a button away. Just as far as like our field sheets, everything's always, uploaded through our systems that we can just see everything, like at our fingertips. But I see what you're saying. And I do hope that at some point, whether it be the funding sources that we've been able to leverage over the years and just the relationships that we've created, we do hope that we can help in some way just to eliminate a headache to any, partnering agencies or municipalities. Just to finish things up here, this graph was just presented to our board in March, just to show where we started, where we need to be. And there was that terrible rain event, and I think it was 19, either 18 or 19, that you see the spike there. But this helps us see that what we're doing is worth it. And what our engineers are saying is, that following the path that we are, if I could get back there, that hopefully we meet the flow requirements and we have everybody in line by 2029. So it's been a ride, to say the least.
Was that the authority's requirement or that's in your set order,
Yes.
100 gallons per capita?
Yeah.
Okay. That's an annual average. Type of thing.
Sure. And actually, with our consent order last year, because so many of our municipalities asked for extensions, DEP gave us a 2-year extension that we didn't request it, because at this point, we need to seal off those SSOs and we're done based on a consent order. We just don't want to do that, to those properties that would be affected. But right now, the last discussions that we had with DEP was for the 2-year extension that they provided to us without us requesting it.
So you don't want to do those, seal them off, because in a bad event, you're
Oh,
afraid that they would cause.
Yeah.
Sort of what we talk about
Yeah.
here is like, you want to keep it open for that catastrophic event.
Yeah.
That
And-
doesn't go into people's basements.
For sure. And we want to talk to DEP about that. We actually have a meeting request to them right now, just to say, look, is this something that we could monitor the flow here? Is it something that we could permit these SSOs? Just to have some discussions and just say, look, in case of an emergency, can we at least have them available to us? We'll gladly follow whatever criteria that you want to see moving forward. So that completes my presentation. I hope this helped in some way. If there's any other questions, I can gladly answer them. If you think of any in the future, I can, provide my contact information. And if not, hopefully we see you all at the conference.
Right, but can you talk a little bit more about your GIS program and the mapping that you have in your system? And
Sure.
is it entirely managed by you or municipalities sending you their data? How are you keeping such a great, almost up to date method for keeping your mapping, house by house?
Sure. The majority of the work is done through our engineering company. We also have a subcontractor that works for the authority for GIS. And basically we just there's never too much data. So we expect all of the field notes to be uploaded, any changes in the system to be uploaded. Obviously every type of work that has been done on both now we don't have, where we lack is if they don't go through our programs on the private side, then we obviously don't have their information. But all of the work, anyone that goes through any of the funding programs that we provide on the private side, we have all of their information as well. So the majority of it is based on the engineering inspections. So whether it's a pressure test on the private side or a pressure test of a new manhole that's installed, a line, we have our inspectors there that they know that all of that data needs to be uploaded on a weekly basis. And it's, we have a read-only version for all of our employees and for the folks in our system.
So
Yeah.
I guess the difference between our systems is you're controlling all this work, even in each individual borough.
No.
So,
Only if our interceptors in the borough or town.
so if a municipality does some work, do they provide you the data to put into a centralized GIS system?
We ask them to. We have no way of holding them accountable, but we've all worked so closely together through the whole process that as far as sharing, like I had mentioned with the idea that you had, with so many of us just trying to get to the same end result, it's been really a positive experience as far as sharing data.
So was you had mentioned, number of different alternatives in terms of federal, state, local, foundation, private dollars.
Yes,
Multi-phase project, multi-year project,
Mhm.
you're getting towards the end of Steve might get it done.
yes.
All in on the private side and mainline side. You have a projected spend of what you've spent.
It's over 200 million. Yeah, just on the private laterals, which I can't wait to talk about all of our programs that we have with the residents, because I think this will help so many of you for the discussion. And I'm actually going to present with our operation and maintenance manager at the conference. So Mike's actually the boots on the ground that's in these homes with the property owners. And I think he's going to bring a whole different set of eyes to what he deals with having the conversations with the residents. But we just in JRA dollars that we invested out of our general fund for the private side, for the lateral loan program that they're paying us back is over 2 million. And that was a way before we had to do the rate increase to show that, look, obviously we're functioning here financially. We want to be able to assist our residents with our in-house dollars to be able to do this work. And they pay us back $6 per every 1,000 a month. So these property owners that are being surcharged $50 a month by the municipalities, they go through our program, their project's $4,000. They start out at 24 to pay us back, but they're eliminating their $50 surcharge and they're decreasing their JRA bill by $15. So it's really, unless you adamantly just don't want to deal with government at all and don't want to do the work, you're actually spending dollars to not be in compliance the way we have it set up.
So we talked about doing dye tests and smoke tests. So obviously, when you did dye test, you probably found some houses 10 years ago that were positive.
Correct.
Did you have any corrective measures then?
No,
No.
no.
So you just had that property flagged as.
And we obviously asked them if it was their downspouts, cut them. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but there was no enforcement behind it.
So what you're using your GIS system now is to go back through and say, at one point, we showed this house being positive.
Correct.
So homeowner me
Yes,
says, I disconnected that.
correct.
So I want to pay the $75 to have the pressure test
Yes,
free. Okay,
yes.
but
And-
that's where you're saying the GIS system of all the knowledge has helped because you could say, well, you failed and looked at that spell, still looks like it's going into the ground.
Exactly. And that's why I don't think we focus so much on the whole system, because we're always trying to defend the process to an individual where we could we have all that information at our fingertips to just show, from this year to here, this is where you are and this is what you failed.
I think the other telling part is it just appears like you're saying, you've done so much outside the home
Yes,
that got you so far,
yes,
but it can only get you so far.
exactly.
It wasn't until you really attacked the foundation drains and the other miscellaneous connections that are that way that
Yes,
you're able to see the real benefits of
sure.
those reductions.
And politically, I understand it all. Like, I don't understand it today. I understood it back then of saying, let's exhaust every option. But you have to think of the engineering fees associated with every option and the Band-Aid fix infrastructure costs at every option. That if it's been proven through this testing that we've done, that it truly does work. I mean, I showed you at least 4 municipalities
So if
befores and afters.
the municipality had a sanitary and a storm
Yes,
and never did anything to the sanitary line, and so the lateral's going to a house. If it doesn't have a site team, what do you do?
they all do.
They all do.
We had them all installed. And ones that were vacant properties, whenever I had talked very early
But
on,
you went in and put, even if you didn't put a new sanitary line in, you found the lateral and inserted a site. T.
correct, every property. And the only questionable ones were ones that had been vacant for like X amount of years. But through the redevelopment that's taken place in Johnstown towards the end of the project, we realized the cost, it was actually a savings, unless the house was completely deplorable, to not have to go back and, because we were then funding the viewport on the property with the lateral project, because that was something we provided to all the residents. Yeah. And it does create that line of public and private, that there's no questions.
Thank you.
One more question. I didn't hear you mentioning a lot about modeling. Our region relies really heavily on predictive modeling for how a system will respond. And even Tony's question before about what storm we're using is based on the fact that our region relies really heavily on using a standard of what is a 2-year storm or what is a standard general year of rain. And then we use that to decide what and how we're meeting almost all of our metrics. And was modeling a huge part of the analysis of your program or the establishment? I just curious if that was a focus for you all.
I think it was more monitoring than modeling. Yeah.
So,
And any of those questions, if there's like specific questions that
Yeah.
I need one of our engineers to answer, I gladly would do that.
Yeah,
I just
no,
know,
I know.
I do think just based on the experience that I had,
Yeah.
from the very beginning, that it was more monitoring of true data, not just saying, and you have to understand the situation we've been in over the years in Johnstown with water. So the people want like true data.
One real quick.
Sure.
Those same lines, the monitoring, very clear to see the drop in RDI.
Sure.
And that's something that I'm not used to seeing. And what we don't see, or what's harder to see in those graphs is what was the effect on GWI for this work? Because, we're kind of more heavily focused on that in some instances. Just let's get GWI out of the system.
Sure.
So, as far as the follow-up, that'd be interesting to see as well.
Okay.
Statistically, what kind of reduction are we getting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of RDII and GWI.
Sure. Yes, I'll make sure that I reach out to see what information we have there. Thank you.
Everyone online is just saying thank you.
Oh,
So
please thank them.
But calling for any last minute questions online, if you want to type them in the chat real fast, or feel free to come off mute if you have them. But not seeing any.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll see.